Right, we want to show you what is fresh off the press before we move on with our discussion. This is what is on the front cover of the Daily Nation this morning. Poll chiefs offer stark choices in IBC crisis. Team ready to quit if they are paid salary and allowances until November next year. If they are found guilty of any offense, they vow to fight it out in the tribunals. Commissioners oppose quest for new register of voters, say it's costly. And the story is tucked away on page 5 of a Daily Nation today. Ipsos survey, we have a pie chart there showing you how it went. We had 26 saying that is Raila. He should continue to lead, work with his party, but not contest for the presidency. And you can read the rest of the details also inside the Daily Nation today. Uhuru leads Raila in new opinion poll ranking on issues facing Kenya. That story is tucked away on page 6 of the Daily Nation. We discussed this with our panelists, so we don't need to belabor that. Also, another story that we have there, Narok Morans beat up Chinese railway workers. More than 200 Maasai youths yesterday beat up a group of Chinese workers working on the standard gauge railway in Narok, injuring 14. The youths who have been demanding jobs at the construction site attacked the workers at the Dukamoja Trading Center on the Narok Maimahiu Road, clobbering them with sticks. Police guarding the site shot in the air to disperse them. The story continues on page 8 of the Daily Nation. But this portends also a threat to our security as well because of the displacement that is happening with standard gauge railway. Of course, we know there is compensation, but is that enough? This is just epitomizing what will arise, especially within the communities as well. I don't know what my panelists have to say regarding this issues of jobs, and then you're seeing the Chinese are working on the construction sites with the standard gauge railway. Who should be benefiting?
I support my people, you know, my community, the Maasai community is the one that brought me up, born there.
Ahmed Ole Hashi?
Yes, my name is Ahmed Ole Hashi.
Ole Hashi.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I support the Maasai community 100%. I think that any track or rail that's going through Maasai land, because you know the Maasais have been marginalized in this country for far too long. We're sitting on their land. Nairobi all the way to the Rift Valley is historically Maasai land. And a century ago, a construction called Kenya was superimposed on it. I think it is unfortunate that the young Maasai boys are not getting work on that railway line. And I probably think that they should cane those Chinese until the Maasai boy gets jobs on that railway line. I support my brothers there, period.
Thank you. Dr. Apollos, briefly.
I understand in that area where Hashi is talking about, there is also a threat about dogs. Dogs are disappearing every day. Just like they disappeared on Thika High when the
dogs.
Chinese... Yeah, dogs. When the Chinese
Which
were
dogs?
there.
Stray dogs or...
Dog, umbwa. they are disappearing mysteriously. And I think the Chinese companies should be conflict sensitive whenever they go for construction, because some of the people they engage, the Chinese they engage, are really unskilled. So these boys who are unemployed, and vijana kwa kasi, they feel so marginalized. It also happened in Rumruti, in Laikipia West. So the managers of these constructions must be conflict sensitive to make sure that they involve the indigenous people to make it appear like they own the project. Otherwise they come, sometimes they come with Nairobi people. Yes. They take Nairobi people to Narok.
So is this an oversight from the government?
It's an oversight from the government and from the River Ministry.
And from the railway
from the River Ministry and from the officials of the Chinese companies.
All right. Yeah. Dr. Mustafa.
Dibal, this is the only country that I have visited in the world that I visited, living in. I've visited many countries in the world.
Yes.
that you have people coming from outside, coming to do work that Kenyans can do. I'm happy that the NGO board has taken a stand and is trying to redress this issue. But the Ministry of Labor has to really work on these issues. It's a country where you find researchers just jetting in as tourists, and the next thing you find them in Malindi, in Lamu, in Mandera, asking questions about Al-Shabaab, about this and that, on tourist visa, not on research visa. I cannot go to Germany today and just go to Frankfurt and start knocking on doors and start doing research. Yes. Why should they come here and do the same? And therefore the Ministry of Immigration Ministry of Labor they have to look at this issue. I'm not surprised at what has happened in, I don't know where that place was. Maimahiu, where the Maasais are beating up the Chinese. Because they see the Chinese have brought in people who are doing the menial jobs that the Maasais can do.
Yes.
Yeah, and this has been the same problem also with Tanzania as well.
That's
you know,
right.
Even you find the Chinese, they're roasting maize by the street side as well.
Yeah, it is, but in Tanzania, they're more serious than, I think, in trying to deal with these issues. I mean, when I worked there for 4 years, I remember one day 12 immigration officers came to my office. They put me in a Land Rover, even though I was just waiting for my work permit and all the papers were actually done okay. We got to be serious about how we are handling the issue of jobs in this country. The government should be creating or helping create an enabling environment where jobs should be created for Kenyans first. And I believe we'll shortly talk about the population and security.
And security. And you raise a very important also issue of, where we have the experts also coming into the country, right? And we have qualified Kenyans who can do that particular job. And they're well able, but if you come to the perks and the salary scales, there is such a wide berth on the locals and the expatriates.
Bilal, in my office, I have given all the jobs that are supposed to be for expatriates. I have given them to Kenyans.
Very good.
And they are paid expatriate salaries, because that's how we should be dealing with Kenyans. Kenyans are highly qualified. We have finest minds in the region, and you'll find Kenyans working across all the way to South Africa. And we need to promote
the local population. Right. Let's hear from you, Professor Naomi Damba.
I agree with my colleagues. This a national security issue.
Yes.
It is much more serious than the ordinary person understands. For instance, if you look at our trade balance between China and Kenya right now, and most of Africa, and it's a very serious trend. These folks not only cutting into the very basic development like cobbler. I mean, we're using toothpicks from China. You tell me Kenya cannot produce toothpicks, and the kind of development, the kind of skills that are necessary to develop this country, they're gobbling it. And very soon, Kenyans are going to be standing on the wayside and watching Chinese doing everything for us. And so I have no problem with diversify our relationship between the West and the East. I have no question about that. That is necessary. But let's watch very carefully what is it we're buying and what kind of relationship, what kind of trend that is taking place.
Right, thank you very much.
I think later on we'll be back to talk about standard gauge railway.
Yes, we need to go. We need to move on. I can see her; she has something to say, but we're strapped for time. Let's see what the standard has for us. Raila allies trash Paul as Uhuru base steady. Leaders dismiss survey showing that majority of Kenyans want CORD leader to abandon presidential quest. Jubilee's popularity is 14% higher than that of CORD. It's a story that is tucked away on page 4 and 5 of Standard today. Also, queries over fee limits for private hospitals. Government yesterday introduced new regulations to control the medical fees charged by doctors and private hospitals. Those who defy the new or the newly defined maximum caps for various medical services will face penalties. That includes warnings, suspension of licenses to the registration, depending on the magnitude of the offense. This story, you can follow it on page 8 of today's Daily Nation. The Standard, I should say. Let's see what we have also on the front cover of the Star. These are the faces of the leaders who are gunning for the governorship of Nairobi come next year. You have them here. And this is a splash today. Angry MPs meet Ruto over Eugene bid for governor. President Kenyatta yesterday was to meet some Nairobi leaders following furious reaction to Wamalo's endorsement by some Mount Kenya MPs in Kiambu on Sunday. And of course, they're saying that they don't want a leader to be imposed on them. Even some leaders who are away, out of the country, they've also weighed in on this particular issue. We have the People Daily IBC chiefs offer to leave, but then you have your ellipsis. Electoral commissioners tell Joint Select Committee to absolve them of all allegations based on 2013 polls if they want them to exit without seeking court action. That story on page 6 of the People Daily today. Free maternity fund now to be handled by NHIF is another story that you can follow inside the People Daily today. Let me show you what we have on the front cover of the Daily Monitor. This is your paper if you're waking up in Uganda, our sister paper in Uganda. Police order goons out of operations. Kayihura's aide says overt operations need no masking. That story is tucked away on page 5 of the Daily Monitor today. And it'll show you also in Rwanda, this is the New Times headlining this particular story of Rwanda to achieve universal access to water next year. This is according to Prime Minister. Also, MPs approve Rwanda's franc. Is it Rwanda's franc or dollars? Right? Grant for UR Centers of Excellence. That story is fleshed out on page 8 of the New Times today. I want to show you also what we have on the front cover of the Business Daily today. Kenya asks UN to map out sea border in search for oil riches. Attorney General Githu Muigai flies to New York to petition United Nations as search for undersea minerals gather space. I think, do we really have our priorities right? First of all, because we have a large expanse of aquifers, right, in Turkana. Why would we be actually seeking this from the UN? Which is good, but I'm saying, do we have it topsy-turvy? Where should we be going? We have this, you know, so much cubic metric tons, I don't know if it's tons actually, or an expanse of water.
I can give the viewers a context to that story.
Very, very briefly.
Somalia and Kenya are disputing their boundaries. You know, every country has 200 knots offshore. So Somalia took Kenya to court. I'm surprised that they did, because Somalia has no business taking Kenya to court. We're helping a lot of things for them. We're doing a lot of things for them. But they took us to court, and Githu Muigai has to go over there and defend the Kenyan case, and that's the context. It's huge amounts of oil in a line that is running laterally and horizontally across the 200 knots, and Kenya is claiming some of that, and Somalia is saying it's not. So the court is going to deal with that.
All right, because we're looking at the issue of resources, and of course momentarily we shall be discussing population and security in this country. And right now we know, as much as we have this burgeoning population, at some point we'll be fighting for these resources as well. And one of them, which is very key, is water. And there's an expanse of water table that has been discovered in Turkana. So my question to you, in light of what we're seeing on the front cover of the Business Daily, should we be going for this particular project, or should we be now, you know, racking our minds on how we can actually try and, you know, extract that water to make it to be, you know, exceedingly beneficial to some people of Turkana? Dr. Apollos.
I think we have not exhausted our Turkana projects, the water and the oil. Okay, it's okay to get our boundaries right, but instead of going to invest in another oil exploration in the high seas of Kenya, we still need to know what has happened with Turkana. So I think our priorities should be focused. We should not be jumping everywhere, you know, like doing nothing.
Yes.
So I understand we have a lot of water in Turkana.
Yes.
We have a lot of oil in Turkana. And we had actually, some of us had started going to Turkana because of oil. But now that dream appears like it has faded. So let's not jump around. We stick to the project that we start.
Thank you. All right, let's move on. We have International New York Times. How Trump managed to avoid draft for Vietnam is another story that you can follow. It says 5 defilements drove fresh scrutiny amid clash with slain soldiers. This is a story of Donald Trump that is on the front cover of the International New York Times today. Also, Tax agrees on this U.S. had hand in the failed coup. This is a very serious allegations for U.S. Tax agree on this. U.S. had hand in the failed coup. Across political spectrum must say that exiled cleric is an American agent. And we know about this cleric and what was really happening. We shall be discussing this much later on that, because we know also U.S. and Russia right now, with the involvement of the leakages of the email or the cybercrime from Russia. Also, we shall give you that story much later in the course of the program. But that's it, that what we have, that is what we have on the front covers of the dailies today. I'm trying to see if I can get my cartoons as well. Interesting. Yeah, there you go. This is what we have on page 14 of the Daily Nation. Briefly, comment on this. And this is about Mugabe. It says, we can see someone is saying, people are actually protesting. This is in light of what has been happening in Zimbabwe right now, with the protesters saying our economy is dead. Mugabe must go. Mugabe must go. We demand our salary. Mugabe must go. We are hungry and we are angry. Then we have, you know, Mugabe here with the police officer. I thought I ordered you to arrest these opposition crooks. Sir, these are your followers. The jails are filled with opportunities, or I don't know. Then we have Mugabe must go, Mugabe must go, Mugabe must go. Everyone is agitating. Do you think this particular protest that is arising in and not only in Zimbabwe, but also in Congo as well? What is really happening with our leadership in Africa?
First of all, on the earlier the earlier newspaper there on Trump,
or the International New York
yeah,
Times?
I think you don't need to go into that, but I think Trump is just a con, and Mayor Bloomberg at the Democratic National Convention say that he's a New Yorker, and he can tell a con when he sees one. Trump is, and the wife, unfortunately, is also a con. I mean, she plagiarized Michelle Obama's speech word by word, and she said that she had a degree from some university, I don't know where, while she did not have it. We should start praying for America. And on Zimbabwe, I still want to repeat what I said in earlier programs here, Dibal, is that Mugabe should graciously exit the scene. He cannot be waiting any longer. This is going to haunt him, and he's going to be in trouble himself at that advanced age. But that does not wipe away the good things that Mugabe has done for Zimbabwe from 1970s, when he went into the bush to fight the British terrorists who were colonizing Zimbabwe, and won Zimbabwe independence, and then built that country in the 80s through 90s, and then problems started because somehow they were caused by the former colonialists.
Right, briefly. Prof.
There is a re-emerging of a strong man in Africa, which is a very dangerous trend. When we look at Burundi, we look at Rwanda, that I was very hopeful for. And the Congo, and the issue in Southern Sudan. We, the people of Zimbabwe, are the one who has to stop this. Mugabe's time has come and gone. There is no value added at all that is giving to his country. There is no reason for anybody to subjugate the constitution of the country and call for more time than necessary. These people are not prepared for a smooth governance and running and development of the country. So people have to move them. That's the only case.
All right, thank you.
I just want to add a little point there, Debal, if you don't mind.
Yeah, briefly.
Debal, you know, my favorite country in Africa is Botswana. My favorite president is Sir Ian Khama.
Yes.
It's got the highest per capita income in Africa.
Yeah.
It's the most developed society probably in Southern Africa because of the peaceful transition that they've had since independence in 1966.
Yes.
This pales compared to Robert Mugabe, who was given the same landlocked country with the same kind of institutions, and he mucked it up, if I can paraphrase the French language. And we want to say, and we should, every week we should pick an African country and say kudos to them. And today mine is Botswana, and its leader, Ian Khama. They're showing the way. He's a talisman. Good for them.
All right, thank you. All right, we want also to delve deeper into our international stories as well. But before I do that, we have Daniel Mugeni saying that I agree with Dr. Mustafa that our immigration ministry has given working permits to undeserving people, or Paul. This is what he says here on Twitter. Right, international news is up next. Right, South Africans are preparing to head to the polls in a vote that could herald a sea change in the country's society and politics. Local elections today could see the ruling African National Party lose major cities it has held virtually unchallenged since the end of white minority rule 22 years ago. Casting an early vote in Johannesburg on Tuesday, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa said he was confident of ANC's success, but with a quarter of South Africa's potential workforce unemployed and the jobless rate among black people aged 20 to 24 at almost 500,000 of voters say their lives have barely improved since the ANC won power in 1994. As well as this, President Jacob Zuma is facing hundreds of corruption charges relating to a major government arms deal in the late 1990s. The South African leader has been beset by scandals during his tenure, but has managed to hold on to his post with backing from the ANC. Many ANC supporters are switching allegiances to the main opposition Democratic Alliance, bolstering its attempts to attract black voters and shake off its image of a party.
Millions of our people will be going to the voting stations to cast their votes and to make their choice of who they want to run their municipalities. We as the ANC remain confident that we've worked hard enough, we've connected with our people, and our people received our message through the length and the breadth of the country.
Now, tens of thousands of people have fled a fresh outbreak of violence in South Sudan, reporting mass killings, looting and forced recruitment of child soldiers. Many of the refugees pouring into neighboring Uganda, Kenya and Sudan have been carrying malnourished children, according to the United Nations Refugees Agency. They are victims of a humanitarian crisis exacerbated by food shortages and a cholera outbreak. UNHCR spokesperson Melissa Fleming said refugee flows into Uganda from South Sudan had doubled in the past 10 days, taking the total to 52,000. 1,000 have fled to Kenya and 7,000 to Sudan, taking the total to more than 60,000. The world's newest nation has been caught up in more than 2 years of ethnically charged fighting between supporters of President Salva Kiir and his longtime rival Riek Machar that has raised fears of wider instability across East Africa. The personal rivalry between Kiir from the Dinka group and Machar Anuer has worsened ethnic splits. On Monday, UNICEF released footage from Al Saba Children's Hospital in Juba, South Sudan, filmed on the July 25th and 26th. It showed many malnutrition children at a hospital which has seen increased.
Spacing is a very intense camp here. It has got services, but it has now got an extension. We're standing on the divide as I speak, and that is now also full.
For us, we can always test the pulse of what's going on inside the country when we speak to the refugees who are coming outside. And we're noticing, obviously, we're responding to refugee flows into Uganda in particular, and that have doubled in the past 10 days, which brings the total in Uganda to 52,000 who have entered the country.
Right, I want to involve my guests on this very briefly, where we're headed to as far as South Sudan is involved. Still, we were grappling with the issue of refugees in this country, but we have also an infiltration of the South Sudanese back into the country as well, as we've given the figures to 1,000 right now. We're talking about population and security also in this country. So what does it also portend for us in later years as well? Professor Noami Damba.
Dubar, I think I've said before several times on this air that both Riek Machar and Kiir has failed to provide leadership for Southern Sudan, and it is time that both of them step down, and either a new UN supervised election take place in the country that will ensure that there is a rational leader. Sort of that, we need to cut South Sudan out of East Africa community to send a very powerful message that they will not be accepted as a member And there need to be preparedness to eliminate their war machine, all the tanks and planes and whatever that they're using. And I think it is time to seriously consider UN mandate to go and supervise Sudan for about a period of 10 years, at the end of which supervised election should take place in order to elect the right person. But we cannot, as African, we cannot, as a civilized world, continue to accept this kind of behavior.
All right. Dr. Mustafa, briefly.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's really stupid for Kiir and Machar to do what they're doing. And I think they should be held responsible for each and every death of that child that is dying out of that war in southern Sudan. And to just help viewers visualize how stupid some of our leaders in Africa are, China is supplying South Sudan with arms. In particular, it's supplying Riek Machar with manpads that can shoot down, including passenger airliners. And for what? So that they can access their oil fields and get good concessions. China is supplying Uganda the fighter jets, which get shot at or shot down by Riek Machar's forces, which are supplied by manpads from China, for China to get better oil deals and concession in Uganda. Now, I mean, it's up to the viewers to just make it up how stupid those leaders are.
All right. You're looking at the U.S. Institute of Peace. They're actually saying, you know, we should have a transitional administration, you know, external one, which also should exclude Kiir and Machar from the transition. That will diffuse a major drive of war, as well as opposition to UN and AU administration among important tribal constituencies. And they say to expedite their departure, the US and other regional and international guarantors of the current peace agreement should offer Kiir and Machar immunity from prosecution and safe haven abroad. So they should actually be ferried from their countries?
No, this thing of immunity is really, you know, Africans are playing around with that. You know, they're killing people there. That's a fact. The way Senegal dealt with, what's his name? Hissène Habré, is the same way any other country should eventually deal with Kiir and Machar. Those, if they continue with what they're doing, they just need to be locked up.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Apollos.
I think the International Criminal Court at The Hague should weigh on these two guys. Because, you see, Riek Machar has just disappeared because there is some external funding from somewhere. And I think the United Nations Mission for South Sudan, UNIMIS, which is in Juba, is doing nothing. Either they do something or they move out. There is no need of spending money on these guys because they are just next, and that is where violence starts. So either they change the mandate to peace enforcement and do a lot of work to make sure that these guys see sense. Then International Criminal Court should actually hunt Riek Machar and Salva Kiir wherever they are. It has been done before in other countries.
Debal, I see and agree mostly with what my colleagues have said, and they're probably right. But my political mind is working now. I think that Debal, so in the future, the governments of this country, of this region, and their foreign ministers are going to be asked a question: who lost South Sudan? And I think that we know where the problem is. We know that South Sudan is the problem. Before looking at it, we ought to look at whether the region itself is failing South Sudan.
Yes.
Because if we, you know, South Sudan is a victim of its history. It's a victim of a lot of things.
Yes.
And my point is whether or not the regional governments in this country and this region have really taken real responsibility to try and really solve that problem to I think they have to a certain extent, but activity doesn't matter. It is performance that matters. And at the end of the day, I believe that South Sudan is part of this region, part of this East African community, and we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice but to fix Somalia and South Sudan. And one of the things that we need to do, you know, the Security Council is coming to Sudan. the Security Council is actually flying to Sudan. And probably the entire regional presidents of this region should be flying with the Security Council to Sudan and their foreign ministers. And we need to put on the table direct intervention for those two guys.
So that is the United Nations Security Council?
Yeah, the UN Security. But I don't think there's a solution without Salva Kiir and Riek Machar in South Sudan. And that's why I differ with my friends. I think that they were part of the problem. They have to be part of the solution because they command loyalty here. And it's like telling us to take Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta out of Kenya and get other people.
If they are the
not
problem,
gonna work.
isn't that the prime solution?
It's
If they are
not
the
realistic.
problem,
So it's what I think.
you take them away from the problem.
Yeah, no, well, I think they created this problem. They have their generals. The problem is that they have hawks under them. And I think these two guys and the region and the Security Council, and there has to be guarantees, not signed agreements. There has to be punitive measures. If they don't do this, this happens. That's where we should go.
Thank you. And of course, the issue of sovereignty also will come into place as well. If you're talking about this transitional authority that should be there in place.
The responsibility to protect
There is
does
no
not include sovereignty.
Sovereignty
The human
is
beings,
shunned
yeah,
aside
exactly.
where
When the-
responsibility
to protect is not
comes
there.
in.
When the people are dying and they're being messed up by their leaders, the idea of sovereignty goes away. The
And this is
responsibility-
why Kiir and Machar should be taken out from
Before-
their positions.
Maybe after
All right,
Dr.
thank you.
Mustafa, but not now because it will cause even more of a problem.
Right,
now.
thank you, thank you. Now, at least 5 people were killed in a bus crash in Southern California on Tuesday. Authorities say the charter bus was traveling on a highway in Merced, I should say, heading to Sacramento when it crashed into a freeway sign pole. The pole went through the bus. Several people were injured in the crash. They were taken to area hospitals. At least 30 passengers were on the bus.
Okay. Hokey smoke side. Ellie.
Bus was traveling northbound on Highway 99, about a mile away from the Hammond Avenue exit, crashing into a pole. It is possible. Hey, where did those passengers go? Those are my peeps. I need to go talk to them. About this scene,
Well, that is a very, very strong pole there. You've seen the way it's really ripped through the bus, right, until the middle there. Now, the first female governor of Tokyo has started her new job at the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Office after her election victory at the weekend. Yuriko Koike was welcomed by hundreds of staff and Tokyo residents with warm applause and flowers adorned with green ribbon, her election campaign color. The sprawling city of some 13.5 million people faces a plethora of problems such as an aging population, daycare shortages, and the ever-present possibility of a big earthquake. A major issue in the campaign was the 2020 Olympics, which Japan hopes will spur its economy as it struggles to escape decades of deflation. Construction of the main stadium has been delayed, and the original logo for the games had to be scrapped after plagiarism accusations. After the resignation of the city's 2 previous governors, Koike will be responsible for saving Tokyo's reputation as host for the games. Republican presidential hopeful Donald Trump campaigned in Ashburn, Virginia, where he talked about funds raised by Republican donors and dismissed a crying baby and the baby's mother. The Republican candidate added that the money donated may even be more than $35 million, as it has not yet been totaled. That's in addition to the $60 $60 million of his own money that Trump says he has contributed to his campaign. He criticized Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton, accusing her of being controlled by those who donate funds to her campaign.
Mine in New York, the biggest in the world, a Chinese bank. Don't worry about that baby. I love babies. So, I love babies. I hear that baby crying. I like it. What a baby. What a beautiful baby. Don't worry. Don't worry. The mom's running around like, don't worry about it, you know. It's young and beautiful and healthy, and that's what we want.
Mona's crammed in. You guys want to weigh in?
Well, you know, I really believe, Debal, that Donald Trump is an expression of a certain section of American society. You do not sociologically come out of a society without you having some kind of social basis. And Donald Trump represents Wall Street gone amok and the real estate gone amok. And he's more interested in getting into the presidency because he feels that there's a reaction from Barack Obama. There's little black children and a black woman and a black man running around in the White House, and white Americans have found this to be a very novel new thing. And I probably think this is a huge reaction from the American psyche to having an African-American president in the White House, and that's why we have Trump there.
All right, let's hear from Professor.
Dubai, I was thick and thin in the campaign for Barack Obama. I had it all.
Yes.
And I know the genesis of this issue is exactly what my friend Hasi has just said. Mm-hmm. For the first time in the history of the United States, white women and white men voted separately. And a combination of white women, African American, Latinos, and youth combined together voted for Barack Obama. Barack Obama became president. White men, particularly less educated white men, became very angry. And they could not believe that a man like this can become president of the United States. Mm-hmm. They organized seriously. And second time, Barack Obama trounced them. This is the group that Trump is riding on. Mm-hmm. Trump is a con man. I met him twice in the past. And what is going to happen is going to self-destruct because there is nobody mm-hmm. in the history of the United States that a man like this has ever been elected.
Mm-hmm. All right. Dr. Mustafa, you have anything briefly?
Yeah, other than just to reiterate what I said earlier, this guy, I mean, if he is going to be the president of the United States of America, he is going now to be the lone wolf that destroys the world.
But interesting, I was just reading from the Wall Street Journal somewhere, if I may just get it there, about Donald Trump and the way now it's a reality that he's leading on the polls, and people have to stick with that right now because, first of all, of the speech that he made. Where was this that he made his speech? The speech that he gave for his nomination.
Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, in Cleveland, yes. It brought a dramatically different shift on the polls as well. And so we have, I don't know if it's a 6th percentile, on the polls that Trump is ahead.
Dubai,
when we look at Hillary
Clinton
disagree.
as well.
You disagree?
Yeah, it's lead as law completely. Clinton is now 8 points ahead of him.
Really?
Yeah, that was before.
That was before.
That was
no,
before
this is just yesterday's I read.
No. I was watching last night. The latest poll is Clinton is 8 points ahead, and the competitiveness are on those states that are going to be the deciding point. Mm-hmm. But overall, Clinton is 8 points ahead. So he has lost, and he continues now to deepen.
Okay.
The survey giving two different, contradicting 8 and 7 points.
Maybe
our friends from Kenya went there to do the survey.
But Debal, the funny thing about this, if I could just add the points, I am really, really worried because I believe that this reaction to Barack Obama and having Hillary Clinton as a woman for the first time to contest the election is going to cause a huge backlash in the Beltway, and it's going to cause a huge backlash among male white Americans. There is going to be a huge problem about race and gender. Race is the fundamental question in American politics, and gender is not far behind. Bangladesh has had women prime ministers. The United States, probably the leading democratic, one of the leading democratic nations of the world, has got a woman after 250 years of independence. That says something about the exclusionary nature of American society. But at the same time, the United States is a beacon in many ways. Provides leadership in a whole slew of areas. But they just can't get over this issue of race, even after electing a black president of the United States, which is unprecedented.
Thank you.
So I think that we hope that Trump loses this election.
I think we should set it or move to do a poll in America.
All right. Yeah. The lone wolf.
The lone wolf.
Okay. Let's move on and we see what is happening also in France now. Mourners also crammed into Rouen Cathedral for the funeral of the Roman Catholic priest knifed to death at his church altar, as France political leaders sought ways to defeat homegrown Islamist violence. Father Jacques Hamel was leading morning mass in the nearby industrial town of Saint-Anne-du-Rouvray last Tuesday, when the attackers stormed in, forced the 85-year-old to his knees and slit his throat while chanting in Arabic. Amid tight security at the 13th century Gothic cathedral in northern France, a procession of senior clergy followed pallbearers who carried Hamel's coffin through the door of mercy and placed it on an ornate rug before the altar. The Archbishop of Rouen, Dominique Lebrun, who left the funeral service, told the congregation that Father Jacques Hamel had a simple heart. Mourners who were unable to enter the church when it reached full capacity watched the service in the drizzling rain on a big screen outside. The crowd then broke into applause when the coffin was taken out. Hamel's murder by French citizens was the first Islamist attack on a church in Western Europe and came just 12 days after a Tunisian man who had pledged allegiance to Islamic State drove his truck through a crowd of Bastille Day revelers in Riviera, a city of Nice, killing 84. In the meantime, President Barack Obama says that if Russia had engaged in hacking the Democratic National Committee, it will be something he will discuss with President Vladimir Putin, but it will not widely alter their relationship.
Keep on at it. In terms of how it affects our relationship with Russia, look, I think we've already got a lot of differences with Russia on a whole bunch of issues. But I think that we've been able to try to stay focused on those areas where we still have a common interest, understanding that we have deep disagreements on issues like Ukraine, but perhaps, potentially, we have an interest in bringing an end to violence in Syria. How do we balance those issues? That's pretty standard statecraft at this point with Russia.
All right, and of course, we had promised you that we'll discuss about that Russia espionage, so to speak, of the cybersecurity as well, and what it really portends for security and relationship between Russia and, of course, the president has spoken there, and he says this will not widely alter their relations with Russia. But do you think this is just maybe a political posturing? Looking at what is really happening right now?
Well,
briefly?
Debal, I think there's political football. I think they're blaming the Russians for their own mess in the Democratic National Convention. I don't think they should drag Russia into their problems in the U.S. To try and paint Donald Trump to be a buddy of Putin and get the votes for the Democrats. This is political posturing, as you said. I think they shouldn't blame everything on Putin.
Great. Dr. Apollos?
I think KGB is the one hacking the emails with the close assistance of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is capable of doing anything. You can see the guy is sick. He's mentally unstable. Had he belonged to that group called the Kurukurax Kran, you can even see it on his face. Look at his face. Huh? Look at his face. His nose. He has those characteristics of someone called Cicely Lombroso, who attributed that kind of physique to a criminal mind. So for me, I don't want to mention him on TV. I don't want to give any publicity. But he's the one responsible for all this.
So you think actually, you hold with this view that he's one of the Ku Klux Klan?
Yes. He's a true advocate. Yes, maybe he's the head of that.
Yeah, it's highly likely that the KGB unleashed the so-called Guccifer to interfere with the nomination, or rather with the Democratic Convention in the U.S. But this raises another issue, that a foreign country can hack into a system or an electoral system of another. And Russia has actually been accused of doing the same for some of the Eastern European countries. They previously hacked onto the electoral system during voting period to try and alter results in favor of a candidate that is pro-Russia. And if they can do that to more developed countries, then I sympathize with our electoral commissions. They will hack into our systems if they want to cause chaos.
All right, okay, let's hear from Prof.
At Dubai, I was with 63 commanders and generals in Israel, and I sit down on the basement and I watch the most sophisticated hacking and cyber defense that you can think about. So everything is possible. Putin is want to reemerge as the old Soviet Union. Putin is really as an issue with Clinton, which is almost personal. Seems to be a relationship, though Trump denied, but there seems to be a very strong relationship between Trump and Putin. And you know, Russia is run by literally a gang-like people that are fairly sophisticated, but supported by old KGB instrument. They're capable of doing exactly what we are talking about. And I would not leave Trump out of the whole thing, because he has very much interest in finding out what's happening with the Clinton.
All right, let's move on, and we look at also other stories that we were following for you. And a Dutch woman who said she escaped from Islamic State said she was tricked into going to Syria last September. Laura Angela Hansen, who was brought to safety by the Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga, said she was originally from The Hague in the Netherlands. Speaking to Kurdish TV station Kurdistan 24, Hansen said that she had converted to Islam as a teenager before marrying a Dutch Palestinian who she met on a dating website aimed specifically at Muslims. However, she said her husband tricked her into going to Syria. Take a look.
I just had my new house, and then I got pregnant and I was a house mom. I think now 3 years ago I'm married. He's from Holland, but his parents are from Palestine. But he's born in Germany, I think. Germany, yes. I was nothing. Just I don't know. I didn't do anything. My father is Catholic. My mother nothing. So I didn't know before I was.
So how did you know your dating website? Dating website?
Yes. They have a site they call muslima.com, and that's how we met each other. I was interested in Islam when I was 13, 14 years old, but I didn't really do anything with it. I just said I was Muslim. And when I was 7 years old, I started to wear hijab and I started to pray and those things. And a little bit after that, I married. To say is, alhamdulillah, I'm safe. And they also heard things like they're very hard. Peshmerga are very hard men. It's not like this. They took my hand and they helped me with everything. They were so good people. I really am so happy. This is what I really want to say to them.
All right, and of course, this also just goes to show what is really happening with the internet as well, because this is where we have all these militants, trying to recruit people. People will visit dating websites, and of course, you don't know whom you're going to wind up with. And here in Kenya also, we've had, just looking at today's standard, that there's an alarm that Al-Shabaab are forcing youth to join them. Now, this is just a matter of forcing. It's not just the way they're being lured because of the trappings that maybe they're promised by Al-Shabaab and other militias as well. Can we just talk briefly about the internet? And we know even right now there is a top-notch CEO also in this country that the son is still missing. This is going to 2 years right now, and we don't know where the son is. Did he join the Islamic State? Did he join Al-Shabaab? There's no whereabouts about his disappearance so far. But of course, also the family has been mealy-mouthed about this. Maybe we can discuss about this and the recruitment that is ongoing. That much is not really brought to the media, but there is a serious recruitment of Al-Shabaab and the Islamic State.
Dubaldi, I don't know about particular persons, but I can talk about the general theory about recruitment. These fellows look for people in the social underclass, in the upper classes and in the middle classes, where there is vulnerability, emotional vulnerability, need for maybe lack of parents, maybe lack of a father figure, maybe lack of a mother figure, for a whole slew of reasons. And they have become very savvy in understanding how the young generation uses the internet and track what kind of things they're going after. Google leaves a lot of footprints. You have got a lot of places that they go to. People are looking for things. Young people are looking for things in Google. We didn't used to do that when we were kids. And they get radicalized because the social conditions and the social landscape that these people have been radicalized in, there is something that provides for that radicalization. It's a whole slew of issues: psychological, cultural, economic, sociological, intellectual. There's a whole slew of it. And the vulnerability of these people tends them to fall into that space unless the people at home actually supervise what they are doing on the internet, unless people who are talking about educate, like Dr. Mustafa, educating people on these things to continue speaking about these things. It's a very, very complicated agenda, Debal, but what we ought to do is fight. The first thing we have to do is win the hearts and minds of the people that you're in, the country that you're in. And what does not win the hearts and minds, Debal, is the rumbling in the Kenya Defense Forces and the police forces that Muslim soldiers and police officers are resigning because they're being labeled as terrorists and people who have terrorist sympathies. That is a scandal that the Kenya Army ought to check into, because that brings the morale of us.
But is it a scandal or is it a reality? Because there has been a report.
And Dr. Mustafa, terrorist sympathizers?
There is a report, and of course we had also one of our reporters really coming up with this particular report, that we have terror sympathizers within the forces as well.
If there is a
this is what we saw with
Well, if there is one...
How can you say that is a scandal, yet there was a case in point in coming?
You can't say that, Debal, that the Kenya Defense Forces, that is made up of Catholic, Hindus, Kalasingas, Somalis and everybody. We can't say that. It's an institution that needs to be protected, and we've got to make sure that they're on one page and nothing veers them away from protecting us as Kenyans, Debal.
Should we bury our heads in the sand and say there is no sympathizers?
Let me focus my attention, Debal, on the recruitment of young people by groups like Al-Shabaab and ISIS. The kind of narratives and ideological meta-narratives that are coming from these groups are highly sophisticated. They take their time to prepare their videos, the messaging that is geared towards the larger public and to the specific groups that they think that they can pull them to join their ranks and file. And the footprints that many young people leave on Google, and they know how to reach out to these young men and women. And now most of the recruitment is done online. Before it used to be through friends and peers, but now it is online, and that is where our children and young people get lost in this whole. They can't really. The way it's presented is this utopia, the Islamic State, the caliphate, and that they're given identity. Some of them will regain their respect, particularly those who are marginalized or underprivileged, and this is a real issue that we have to address. Al-Shabaab is now doing so forcefully. I saw General Mwathethe saying that this is now being done forcefully, yes, particularly in Somalia. And here we've kind of dented their way of recruitment because of the kind of work that has been done online. Now, if you type a beheading, probably a video will appear alongside that of really trying to repudiate the beheading and the way Al-Shabaab, ISIS is misinterpreting the Quran, so that young people can see that, oh, there is another interpretation here that is different. That is something, but we are obviously not doing enough.
We're not doing enough.
No, we are not doing enough, and we need to do a lot more. These people are devising new ways, and the kind of narratives that are coming up are better every time.
We'll stop for time. Professor, very briefly.
I chair a technical committee of the Inter-University on Security. We are just about to come up with a guide for all universities. This issue is much more serious than the ordinary person understands. I ask a top Israeli general, how long is it going to take for these people to come up with the miniature A-bomb? And he said much sooner than we can think about. They already have on their possession biological weapon. And so the future war, you are not going to look at about 5, 6 people shooting their way in. It's a one person, one lone wolf, which is capable of killing millions of people. This is the kind of actual situation that exists today. 35%, 70% of our youth under the age of 35 are on the internet. There are no guide. And it is a big problem.
I think we need to dedicate also a program where we'll discuss about ideologies and ideologues, and what also the government is trying to do to make sure that our youths are de-radicalized. Right, we shall move on, but you also can read this story on page 11 of the Standard, where Shabab recruiting youths by force. This is according to the KDF chief, that is General Mwathethe. You can follow that particular story. Right, let's move on and we see what we are having. Chinese soldiers stole the show in Russia at the just opened International Army Games 2016. China sent its military personnel to the event of Safe Environment, Sniper Pioneer, and Suvorov attack at the event of Safe Environment, which was held in Yaroslavl region. Chinese soldiers participated in, along with their counterparts from Egypt, Russia, and Kazakhstan. Each crew, according to the rule, has to drive a wheeled armored truck for 3 laps, during which they have to accomplish search for radioactive sources, take samples from contaminated soil, vegetation, or water, as well as conduct decontamination. The Chinese team finally won the first place. And finally, a series of demonstrations against the Rio 2016 Olympics on Tuesday forced the torch relay to change route, delaying the procession by an hour on the eve of the Flame's arrival in Rio de Janeiro. This leg of the relay through the city of Niterói, overlooking Rio de Janeiro from the other side of Guanabara Bay, started 1 kilometer from where it was originally planned due to security issues. Masked protesters clashed with the riot police, who fired tear gas and arrested at least 2 people. The Folha de Sao Paulo newspaper reported this. The newspaper estimated some 200 people were involved in the protest, including students and teachers, some holding union flags. Protesters said they were against public spending on the Olympics. Right, and of course that is our international news wrap. We want also to thank our panelists who have been here this morning to talk to us, but we need to give you a recap, and I will give them also headline thoughts as we are winding up. Pollster Ipsos is on the spot over what some feel as being unfair to CORD leader Raila Odinga. The question on Raila Odinga's political future has generated debate, harsh reactions and questions from some journalists who attended the release that researcher Tom Wolfe was hard pressed to answer. According to the latest release from Ipsos, more than half of Kenyans do not want CORD leader Raila Odinga to take part in the 2017 election. South Africans are preparing to head to the polls in a vote that could herald a sea change in the country's society and politics. Local elections today could see the ruling African National Party lose major cities it has held virtually unchallenged since the end of a white minority rule 22 years ago. Casting an early vote in Johannesburg on Tuesday, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa said he was confident of ANC success. Right, and I want to thank my panelists just for them to give their headline thoughts, just to say thank you. One second.
I want to say thank you to the KDF and the security forces, the intelligence for keeping us safe in this country. We want to pass kudos to them. Make sure they keep it together, keep themselves together, have an esprit de corps, make sure they move as Kenyans, walk as Kenyans. And lastly, we want to thank Usha, Benson, Peke, and Director Mike for the great job they do here every day, making sure that we come here and do a great job. And to you, Debal, thank you very much
and
for inviting
to Rudia
us.
as well. Thank you also.
My condolences to Mark Mwithiga
Yes.
and to Kenyans.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, just to thank all those that are keeping this country safe. But we have a lot more to do in the face of increasing threats to our security.
Thank you.
Fellow Kenyans, we cannot afford to talk about government in abstract. Level of corruption, unemployment, lack of housing, unplanned demographic growth, land policy, education policy is a threat to our national security, and every one of us have a role to play to make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for your valid campaign and your tweets as well. Just as we're going, Taflon Dawn 1921 is saying the Kenya government